I knew that this was going to be the outcome, like, I would have never done something like this, but you don't know when you're in the moment.
The trip was originally planned as a bonding experience for the Kardashian Jenner sisters, a tradition the family occasionally tries to keep alive despite their chaotic schedules and growing differences. But what started as a potential full-fledged sisterhood getaway quickly turned into a much smaller event than expected. The intended group dwindled down to just Kim, Khloé, and Kris. Kendall Jenner backed out last minute due to work commitments tied to her 818 tequila brand, which wasn't a complete shock considering how career-focused she tends to be. Meanwhile, Kourtney Kardashian decided to stay home with her newborn son, Rocky, choosing not to travel so soon after giving birth. An understandable reason, though it raised eyebrows among her sisters for being a convenient excuse. Kylie Jenner was notably absent too, with Khloé dryly pointing out, "Of course Kylie's not here," subtly signaling that her lack of participation had become expected at this point. What makes the absences more interesting is how they reflect the current fragmentation of the once tightly knit Kardashian clan. The vibe around this trip immediately shifted. Instead of a big sisterhood reunion, it became a more intimate trio: Kim, Khloé, and Kris. This new dynamic set the stage for more focused conversations, and unsurprisingly, more pointed drama. Without the buffer of the full group, tension became more concentrated and past grievances resurfaced. The smaller group also meant less opportunity to divert conversations, which eventually opened the door for confrontations that had been simmering beneath the surface, especially when it came to who was truly walking the walk when it came to family values. During the ride to their destination, Kim Kardashian spent a large chunk of the trip FaceTiming with her daughter North, who was traveling in China with Kanye West. What could have been a cute check-in moment quickly became an all-consuming activity. Kim was glued to her phone, chatting, checking in, and getting emotional over not being with her daughter. For most people, a mother checking in on her child wouldn't be a big deal. But for Kim, the optics were a little more complicated. Why? Because not too long ago, Kim criticized Khloé for doing exactly the same thing, only under much less dramatic circumstances. Khloé had previously been chastised by Kim for constantly calling her kids while they were away on a sister trip in Italy. Kim claimed that Khloé was too overbearing, calling her a helicopter mom, and implying that her constant parenting even while away was annoying and unnecessary. Now, here was Kim, not just calling once to say hi, but deeply engaging with her daughter for an extended period during their limited sister bonding time. She was exactly replicating the same behavior she had so confidently judged in Khloé. Even Kris Jenner seemed quietly taken aback by how oblivious Kim was to the irony. This wasn't just a quick call. Kim was immersed in FaceTiming, barely present for the people physically around her. The contradiction didn't go unnoticed, and it instantly triggered tension that would only escalate as the trip continued. The tension between Kim and Khloé didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It had roots in a past incident that clearly still stung, and this trip brought that memory roaring back. During a previous Kardashian family vacation to Italy, Khloé had spent time each evening checking in with her kids, wanting to make sure they were okay before bed. It wasn't disruptive or over the top, just a mom being a mom. But Kim wasn't having it. She called Khloé out for what she described as helicopter parenting, mocking her for needing to constantly check in. Kim had taken a self-righteous tone, implying that Khloé needed to loosen up and let go a bit, especially during a rare sisters getaway. The comments hurt Khloé at the time, but she kept things relatively calm in the moment. Fast forward to this Joshua Tree trip, and the tables have turned completely. Kim was now the one constantly on the phone with her daughter, deeply emotional and distracted, doing everything she once said was unnecessary. Khloé, who had clearly been waiting for an opportunity to highlight this contradiction, didn't hold back. The moment had a sense of karmic justice to it. Kim had played the parenting police before, but now she was proving she wasn't above the same behavior. The past hypocrisy made Kim's actions even more grating to Khloé, because it wasn't just about the present trip, it was about a pattern of Kim talking down to others while breaking her own rules. That layered context made Khloé's eventual outburst feel all the more justified. Kris Jenner, ever the matriarch, rarely chooses sides too openly, but even she couldn't ignore what was happening here. Watching Kim obsess over FaceTiming her daughter while knowing full well she had criticized Khloé for the same thing was too much. Kris bluntly called Kim out for what it was, a double standard. She didn't sugarcoat it. With her signature directness, Kris told Kim that this was a clear pot calling the kettle black situation. She reminded Kim that she had gone hard on Khloé during the Italy trip, giving her grief for doing exactly what Kim was doing now. Kim tried to laugh it off, but Kris wasn't joking. This wasn't just a gotcha moment for Kris. It was a commentary on how Kim often holds others to a higher standard than she holds herself. And it wasn't just about parenting. The moment symbolized a broader pattern where Kim critiques others for behaviors she later adopts when it's convenient for her. Kris's tone suggested that even she was getting fed up with the inconsistency. She didn't let Kim off the hook, and her calm but pointed confrontation forced Kim to face the hypocrisy head-on. Coming from their mother, the accusation carried extra weight. It wasn't just a sibling calling her out. It was the family's central authority figure holding her accountable. Kris might not have used the harsh language Khloé would later use, but her words cut just as deep, if not deeper. She exposed Kim's habit of rewriting the rules to suit herself. Khloé Kardashian has never been one to mince words, especially when she feels someone's crossed a line. And on this trip, she let loose. In her confessional interview, Khloé didn't just gently call Kim out, she obliterated her sister's double standards. The words were raw and sharp. She called Kim a F-king hypocrite, and even went as far as calling her a two-faced mother of cur. That's not typical Kardashian banter. That's a full-blown verbal takedown. The rage in Khloé's tone revealed how deeply she'd been holding onto this resentment. It wasn't just about Kim FaceTiming her daughter. It was about the years of Kim positioning herself as the mature one, the one who thinks she always knows better while constantly judging everyone else's decisions. This moment gave Khloé a rare opportunity to turn the spotlight back onto Kim, and she didn't waste it. She pointed out the hypocrisy with brutal clarity, refusing to let Kim play innocent or laugh it off like she usually does. The choice of words showed that Khloé's frustration wasn't just performative for the cameras. It was real and long-simmering. Her insult wasn't just about one FaceTime call. It was about the deeper pattern of Kim acting like she's above reproach. This was Khloé reclaiming her voice and refusing to let Kim get away with playing the victim when she's often the one dishing out harsh judgment. It was a dramatic, unfiltered moment that shook up the usual family dynamic. After both her mom and sister had thoroughly called her out, first with Kris calmly but firmly labeling her behavior hypocritical, and then Khloé unloading with full-blown fury, all eyes were on Kim to respond. And to her credit, Kim didn't deny it. She didn't gaslight, twist the narrative, or try to flip the blame. Instead, in a rare moment of genuine self-awareness, or maybe just defeat, Kim laughed and said it herself. "I'm a hypocrite. You got me." That might seem like a throwaway line, but coming from someone like Kim, who's been known to fiercely defend her every move, it was actually kind of shocking. The laugh she gave while saying it wasn't dismissive either. It felt more like she was caught red-handed and had no choice but to own it. For a second, it looked like she actually understood how ridiculous her stance had been, and maybe even how unfairly she'd treated Khloé in the past. Still, the way she brushed it off with humor made you wonder, was it true remorse, or just Kim being savvy enough to know when she'd lost the battle? Either way, the admission stopped the confrontation from spiraling further, but it also highlighted a major theme in the Kardashian family: the ability to acknowledge bad behavior without necessarily promising to change it. Kim's confession was disarming, maybe even endearing, but it also felt like a get-out-of-jail-free card she's played before. She can laugh and admit she's wrong, and just like that, the tension dissolves, at least temporarily. But the deeper question remains: how many times can someone admit to being a hypocrite before the apology stops meaning anything? After Kim finally admitted to her hypocrisy, Kris Jenner stepped in once again, but this time, it wasn't to throw more shade or stoke the flames. Instead, She played peacemaker and mother in equal measure. Looking at Kim, Kris dropped one of the most memorable and hilariously blunt lines of the entire episode. "Just don't be an asshole." It was the kind of no-nonsense parenting advice only Kris could deliver. It didn't come with judgment, a long lecture, or passive aggressiveness. It was straight, effective, and soaked in love, the way Kris often handles conflict in the family. Her comment was also layered with a sort of generational wisdom, that it's okay to be wrong, but it's not okay to keep doing wrong and expect everyone to smile through it. It was Kris's subtle way of saying, "Fine, you're a hypocrite, but let's not make a pattern of it." More importantly, Kris's comment held up a mirror to a core issue within the Kardashian family: the lack of accountability that often gets masked by humor or sisterly forgiveness. While everyone jokes, cries, and eventually hugs it out, Kris seemed to be nudging Kim towards something more lasting: growth. And in doing so, she was also subtly defending Khloé, without saying it outright. Kris was signaling that Khloé's frustrations were legitimate and that Kim needed to be more aware of how her actions affect others. The beauty of Kris's delivery is that it was both loving and cutting. A single sentence, 5 words, and it encapsulated the energy of the whole confrontation. While the main focus of the episode was the hypocrisy drama between Kim and Khloé, there was also plenty of quiet and not so quiet shade thrown at the sisters who didn't show up for the Joshua Tree trip. And honestly, that absence said just as much about the family dynamic as the arguments that took place. First, there's Kendall Jenner, who bailed due to work, more specifically, business matters involving her 818 tequila brand. While no one openly slammed her decision, there was a definite sense that her career always seems to come first, and she doesn't go out of her way to prioritize these family bonding moments. It's almost as if she keeps one foot out the door when it comes to the Kardashian chaos. Then there's Kylie, who didn't even offer much of an excuse. Khloé's dry remark, "Of course Kylie's not here," was short but loaded. It echoed past complaints about Kylie being emotionally or physically absent when it comes to family time. She's often portrayed as aloof, distant, and more wrapped up in her own world than invested in rebuilding sibling bonds. The unspoken subtext was clear. Kylie skipping out was expected, but still disappointing. And finally, Kourtney, the biggest wild card of them all. She stayed home to care for newborn Rocky, which seems completely valid on the surface. But as we'll see in the next point, Kim had her own very Kim-like interpretation of that move. All in all, the absence of 3 sisters turned what should have been a full family moment into a concentrated drama capsule, allowing tensions to boil over without the usual distractions or diversions. It made the trip feel more intimate, but also more volatile. Kim Kardashian didn't hold back when talking about Kourtney skipping the trip, and her commentary was drenched in sarcasm. With Kourtney recently giving birth to her baby boy Rocky, most would assume she had a totally valid reason to sit this one out. But Kim wasn't buying that excuse at face value. In a moment that was clearly meant to be a joke, but also carried more than a hint of real judgment, Kim remarked that Kourtney would probably be using the baby excuse until the kid's 10. The line landed with a mix of laughter and subtle awkwardness, because while Kim was joking, she was also making a point. This wasn't just about one missed trip, it was about a pattern. Kourtney has often chosen distance from the rest of the family, especially in recent years, citing emotional boundaries, mental health, and general lifestyle differences. Kim's sarcastic jab was her way of saying, "Here we go again." And honestly, there was a bit of pent-up resentment baked into her tone. Kourtney and Kim's history is full of tension, especially over the past few seasons of their show, where they've clashed over everything from business decisions to parenting styles. So while the baby excuse might be real, Kim saw it as part of a larger pattern of disengagement, and she was clearly annoyed. The moment was funny, yes, but it also highlighted the deep rift that still exists between Kim and Kourtney, even when they're not in the same room. Kim's joke served as both a dig and a public call-out, reinforcing her belief that Kourtney uses motherhood as a shield from accountability, and she's over it. Toward the end of the trip, after all the arguments, call-outs, and shade had been thrown, Kim tried to lighten the mood with a tongue-in-cheek remark about how the vacation had basically turned into the Kim and Khloé show. She joked that with only 3 of them there, and Kris mostly playing backup. It felt like a two-woman spotlight event, with their mom functioning as a supporting character. On the surface, it sounded playful and self-aware, like Kim was acknowledging how much airtime she and Khloé had taken up. But dig a little deeper, and it revealed something more. Kim sees herself and Khloé as the central figures in the family's current narrative. Whether it's intentional or not, Kim has a tendency to position herself at the heart of whatever storyline is unfolding, and this was no different. What's ironic is that while she was joking about being the star, she had just been called a hypocrite and exposed for her contradictions, yet still managed to twist the story to center around her. Khloé, meanwhile, may have played the co-star role reluctantly, but she was undeniably a driving force in the drama. And Kris? Well, she was the glue as always, trying to hold things together with humor, wisdom, and the occasional momism. The absence of the other sisters, Kendall, Kylie, and Kourtney, further reinforced this feeling. With them gone, the spotlight naturally shifted to the ones who did show up and brought the tension with them. Kim's quip about it being the Kim and Khloé show was funny, but also telling. It spoke volumes about how the family operates. Drama fuels attention, and attention fuels the brand. And in that sense, Kim wasn't wrong. Whether you love her or can't stand her, she is the show.